unbelievable. G, please. Here come Bluebird Records, Lester Melrose, one of the great record companies out of Memphis. Notice the great talent of a lot of these great blues players, piano, guitar. Hired Dr. Clayton, Sonny Land Slim, Blind John Davis on his record label to back up all these great guitar players. Big Maceo. Good Lord, send me an angel down. Don't want no skinny woman, one fat, fine and pleasing round. When I'm sitting right here, Bradenton, Florida, you got the gold 6-string guitar in my hand. not evident in the blues back there. I did that the other day. I was telling them about how, like, you know, like the purists in England would be like, why'd you throw that in there? But anyway.
Those chords, they sneak them in back then too.
No, I was telling everybody that last one, I used to tour it in Europe a lot, but especially in England. Anytime, like, I'd play like these, you know, if I made a mistake in the lyrics, or loopers were not allowed, you know, if I threw in something that was weird, you know, all night, you know, Big Bill Brunsey never used the 13th in that chord.
You know why that
just
is?
like,
Steve, you know why that is?
because they listen.
Well, I lived in Europe for 20 years, so I know why, and it's the same all over Europe, it's not England. It's because their familiarity with any of the blues music is from a specific record, a specific cut on a specific record. So for most Europeans, that represents that song. Whereas if you grew up in America, you go around and you would hear these performers playing and find out that they play it different every single night. If they play it twice in the same night, they play it differently. And that's the reality of the music.
Did Monk play things the same, different every
Of
night?
course.
Did, okay.
Of course. Everyone.
He's a genius on Monk, this guy, too.
No, I'm not. But I mean, I've gone around and listened to an awful lot of players live night after night. Sometimes I'd be someplace where I would finish early and I could go out every night and hear the same, like Dave McKenna, one of the greatest pianists in jazz, used to play up the road from where I was playing, and every night I'd finish at like 10 and he'd play until midnight and go up and hear him play the same songs every night. And they were always completely different. And if you even listen to the recordings through the years of famous groups, they're always different. So it's really a misconception of people growing up only familiar with recorded music and not the live versions, that it's somehow, these things are written in stone, and they're just not. It's not the nature of jazz.
No, and I gotta say, you know, I also work at WSLR Radio 96.5 FM on Tuesdays, and there's really a lot of new stuff from the younger generation. That's really good stuff. They're moving the blues forward. I'm seeing just a resurgence in a lot of younger people out there. You know, some of the stuff that I get is not really that good, but there's a lot of people that are, you know, taking music and moving it forward, but still using a lot of the basic elements of the blues and stuff like that. But let's get.
All right, I want to make one point. A lot of fans and listeners are purists for one reason or another, but the musicians almost never are.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so we're pretty much up in northern Mississippi, and you know, we're talking about Memphis, and that last song was.
I've already been to St. Louis.
I mean,
Kansas City.
Well, no, we still got to get back up to Kansas City again. You know, I just wanted to show that story because of how you met.
Right.
You got the job in Philly. I'm with Joe Jones, not in Philly.
Well, I will just make the point that this flow of the music up the Mississippi River heading towards Chicago was driven by economic influences.
Oh yeah, let's get back to economic.
You know,
yeah, I mean,
the industrialization of America and the jobs, they were plentiful up north. They were not plentiful down south, and that was a big part of the huge black migration to the cities, which included all the you know, places like St. Louis and Kansas City and Chicago. And of course, with that, there was an employment opportunity for the musicians. So the musicians followed along, and that's how the music ultimately moved around.
You know, in historical facts too, there's two major things that happened there too. Was the gin mill was created by Eli Whitney. What was it the name of the?
Yeah.
The gin mill, the cotton gin. Yeah, the cotton gin mills. A bar.
That was a bar in Houston, Texas.
Right.
We played a lot of gin mills, Steve.
Yeah, the cotton gin came around, then industrialized. They didn't need all the labor to pick the cotton, so now there's no jobs. So what happens? Well, they were already going up to Memphis for a lot of different reasons. That's sort of the Memphis sound we did before, but also what happened was World War II came about, and a lot of people, the World War II started the whole industrialization of the United States. I mean, with everything from, you know, Boeing, all the manufacturing of weapons and everybody bonding together was a big thing that started the big industrial society, and then with the cars. So now you got jobs in Chicago, Detroit. I don't know about Kansas City. And excuse me, I'm not as big of a Kansas City piano guy as you are. I know a little bit more about St. Louis, but maybe you could fill us in a little bit more on how all of a sudden all the music, all these piano players started filtering into these areas.
Well, there was something called the territory bands that in jazz that was prior to, as a matter of fact, the Count Basie band grew out of the territory bands. And I mean, there was no television, there was radio, but people went out for music. There were dance halls, live music was a very popular thing in the first part of the century in America, everywhere also, in small towns, medium-sized towns, wherever it was. So the small bands traveled around the territories. They played some really, places at the end of the earth.
It's a territory band.
Yeah, these were small bands.
They're
This is where
bands.
Joe Jones came from. This is where Lester Young came from. This is where all the guys in the Basie band came there from. And the piano players followed around and played in all those places. And so Kansas City was sort of the center. That was the urban center for that region of the Southwest. And and there was more work there ultimately because it was a thriving metropolis ultimately. And it should be mentioned that jazz always thrives in an environment where there's a very liberal approach to bar life, nightlife in the cities. And that's what happened in New Orleans, and that's what happened in Kansas City too. It was what they call a wide open town.
Well, before we get, maybe we should still do Jelly Roll, to show a little bit about the New Orleans, because now, as things were moving forward, we were in the 20s, we were talking about New Orleans, but now all of a sudden, Lasky Brothers, a lot of stuff was going over in New Orleans. Music was progressing too, with a lot more of the new beats that were coming. So I think we should at least maybe do Jelly Roll.
Well, the Jelly Roll tune is really interesting because it comes from a vocal quartet. Like in a very early, it was very popular, called the Norfolk Jazz Quartet, which nobody's ever heard of, but they were very popular, and they were like a predecessor to Mills Brothers, the Delta Rhythms Boys, and people like that, the black, very popular four-man harmony quartet. This particular piece has roots in gospel music, it has roots of rock and roll in it, it's got everything. But we adapted it from a vocal quartet. There was the bass on that recording is a vocalist,
Right.
and there's no drums. So let's do that.
Yeah, this is
Like
also
Jelly Roll. This is also on our CD.
Right. Okay. So I was just talking about Lester Melrose before, and getting back to Memphis and the Bluebird record label, and how a lot of these guys were originally, most of them were sidemen. I mean, you had, well, I guess we kind of missed over Leroy Carr, Scrapper, Blackwell. They were one of the great teams. All of a sudden, like duos like you and I were putting together. They had Big Maceo and Tampa Red. Did we do a Big Maceo and Tampa Red? Which ones? I can't remember right now.
Whiskey drinking woman, wasn't that big?
Tom Dorsey, Georgia Tom.
Georgia Tom Dorsey, right? Georgia Tom Dorsey, and who?
Tampa Red's partner for many years before he became the father of gospel music.
Right. But you had, but Tampa Red did record with Maceo on some of that stuff, and I'm trying to think of the Leroy Carr and Scrapper Blackwell did Blues Before Sunrise. What's another one? It Hurts Me Too. That's another one.
How long?
How Long? Right. That's another. And then well, we should. No, I think we should do. There's another one. I've had my fun, but I don't get well no more.
Going down slow. Going down slow.
Going down slow. Thank you.
Something bright and cheerful like that.
No, let's just skip that. Let's just keep going on. And there's no way we could touch on everybody.
But we could do How Long?
Well, maybe we'll that for an encore. I kind of want to get to like some of the what I was with the sidemen, because a lot of these guys, like going to Chicago, a lot of these guys were sidemen. Sonny Land, Blind John, Johnny Jones, who's the Elmore James. We're going to do one of Johnny Jones' records right now. Hoy Hoy Hoy. You had, Span finally started doing some of his stuff. What I'm trying to say is pretty much the piano players now started taking a forefront, instead of just being a background for a lot of the bigger record companies. Like Sonny Land Slim, Ain't Gonna Drink No More Whiskey, we can do that one. And, but let's do.
We also have the 8-bar blues that we do on the record.
What 8-bar blues? That's we can do the Leroy Carr thing. So let's just get let's talk about Johnny Jones. Johnny Jones was a piano player, great band. It was you had Elmore James on guitar, you had Homesick James sometimes on bass, or Mac Thompson. You had Earl Phillips on the drums.
I want to interject something. I always interrupt anyway. But you know what I think is so great about this? When you hear a history of the blues, normally it's kind of professorial, which is a bit of my approach, and textbook stuff. The great thing of doing a history of blues with you, Steve, is you actually knew all these people, hung out with them.
Well, no.
If you didn't know them directly, then you knew the people that played with them.
I mean, I knew Earl Phillips. Earl Phillips was...
And one step removed is still
Johnny
quite...
Jones.
No, but one step removed is very close, because when you do... One thing that Joe Jones said to me that's really interesting, maybe the most interesting thing that he said to me, and he was a big talker, said a lot of interesting stuff. He said, and he was prone to giving advice, and he said to me, Bill, you'll find as life goes on that you'll end up playing the people that you knew.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. And that's what blues musicians and jazz musicians do. He was absolutely right. It happens naturally, osmotically. So when you meet someone who's one step removed from one of these people, you're still getting it from a direct source. That was my point.
Well, I got to say one thing that, now as I get older, and it's not so
Steve,
much...
listen, you're in Sarasota. You should not talk about being old.
No, I think that one major thing for me was it's not so much the stage time, but with a lot of these blues guys was driving, after the gigs. Either going home late at night and talking, like we drive up to Madison, Wisconsin from Chicago, and I remember Big Smoky Smothers and Homesick and us talking in the car, and the stories or like Honey Boy telling me, Honey Boy shared this with me when I was down in Honey Boy was a great country blues man, and we were down in Miami doing a show at the New Colony Theater, and then we went back to the room, and we shared a room, and he was telling me about how Big Walter died, that Big Walter was pushed down the stairs by Franny's kids, you know, and he said, you know, if you ever marry, you know, a woman and the stepkids are never gonna like you, they'll never respect you. And it was like, I didn't know that he got pushed down those stairs. That's pretty much how he died of the wounds that he did, which was an amazing story. But you know, again, you know, stuff like, and like, you know, how Robert Johnson died because of a, you know, he was messing around with somebody else's woman and they poisoned
The club
him.
owner's woman.
Right, he's like, you know, don't mess around. You know, a lot of these things they tell you is like, you know, great life facts and stuff like that.
Well, the club owner that he was messing around with, he had access to all the booze that was being served.
No, well, it wasn't the club owner that was. It was somebody else came in there, and yeah, I guess
He was, you know,
with the strychnine, yeah.
instructed to lace his drink.
Yeah.
That is such a tragedy.
Well, the better thing is just to bring bottled water.
Well, one of it, who was it that was with him? Was it Tampa Red or somebody tells the story that he tried it. He said, "Don't drink out of an open bottle." Tried
Right.
to talk about it,
Yeah, anyway.
but nobody listens.
So let's go to Johnny Jones.
Well, I dreamed of heaven and saw my baby there. Well, I dreamed of heaven, saw my baby there. She had put her white teeth and long black wavy hair. I said, hoy, 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 yeah, let's jump. Well, my baby's kisses taste like cherry wine. Well, my baby's kisses taste like cherry wine. Well, I love my baby well till the day I die. I said, hoy, 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 yeah, let's jump. Yeah, I'm so happy, happy as I can be. Yeah, now I'm so happy, happy as I can be. Well, I love my baby, she's so good to me. I said, ho, 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 yeah, let's jump. You got Bill. Well, I'm so happy, happy as I can be.
Johnny Jones, yeah. What was that in the last 24 bars you were doing that on the left hand? Do that pattern right there. You were doing like a little bit of a jump.
Well,
No, the last song. There you go. Just do the left hand alone, Brad. We'll talk. Anyway, that's the essence of
that's sort of a freight train kind of a